Good morning. It's an absolute delight to have the opportunity to open up this morning's symposium with such a terrific lineup of speakers. Now, my job setting the scene is to identify just some of the key points that are going to be addressed in this morning's presentations and then no doubt in the healthy discussions and debate this afternoon as well. Those key points are: how does green life play in the current climate change debate? What is the role? Then I want to present to you an integrated definition for the term sustainable urban landscapes. We'll look at some of the challenges and opportunities for increasing green life in urban environments, and then just finishing on just being quite clear about some of the many very strong and very important environmental and social benefits that come out of creating urban greenscapes. Firstly, green life and the climate change debate. Climate change has come to the fore of the current environmental and sustainability discussion. And as a response, I guess the nursery and garden industry has really been trying to work out how we can play a role. I think what's important is for us to have an understanding about what's possible, what's realistic, where we can set our goals and a path to get to. There are some common misconceptions with the climate change issue, and particularly with the role of green life in carbon sequestration. Now, what we have to have a look at is how the plants that we use commonly in our gardens and our landscapes really play out for energy savings and also for carbon fixing. The reality is that under current frameworks for carbon accounting, the intentionally managed tree plantations have very strict and quite onerous accounting procedures. We need to understand that. The reality also is the bulk of our landscape biomass is part of the short-term or current carbon cycle. Okay? Turf, shrubs, annuals, many of our trees, they're short-lived species and don't currently meet the criteria for long-term carbon fixing under the various carbon accounting schemes. As I mentioned, the strict monitoring and auditing requirements must be satisfied to get carbon credits and to be able to enter that whole growing economic domain. And unfortunately, the costs associated with measuring and monitoring and reporting, auditing, may well outweigh the benefits, particularly for small to medium-scale businesses. Now, this is not to say that these opportunities aren't real, but we have to understand the current regulatory framework, understand the debate, and get a seat at the table. The important thing is we do know some things for certain, and that is the way that we design and maintain our urban landscapes can make a massive difference to addressing pressing environmental issues. And it does so in many ways. And this is where I put forward this integrated definition of sustainable urban landscapes. The term sustainable is one that's been bandied around, perhaps one that many of us are getting frustrated with and looking for new terminology. But let's look at a multi-criteria approach for understanding this term. It's how we can use our landscapes to be more energy efficient in an urban area. And we can do that in a number of ways. Through improving the thermal performance of our buildings, whether it be homes or commercial spaces, okay? Through appropriate summer shading and allowing in warming winter light with strategic placement of trees and vines and shrubs, to actually reduce the heating and cooling energy needed to make these buildings livable, reducing energy use, reducing CO2 output, and therefore still contributing to a reduction in climate change, but perhaps with a different approach. On a larger scale, on a large urban scale, urban footprint scale, we call this urban cooling, and this will certainly be discussed in detail throughout this morning. But we can also use our landscapes to do things like grow food and recycle biomass, and therefore save energy through reduction in transport costs. And this is something that really needs to be explored. And our landscapes these days are comprising more and more of hardscape structures. And so we need to be mindful of not only the source and environmental impact of sourcing those materials, but the embodied energy content. That is how much energy, and at the moment predominantly fossil fuel energy, has gone into the mining, manufacturing, transport processes to make these hard landscape structures. And to be conscious of life cycle assessments when designing and choosing materials. And then weighing off what is the embodied energy cost and the whole life of cycle assessment of greenscapes, soft landscaping in our urban form over hard landscaping. We can also use our landscapes, both residential and public open space, to create habitat, to help reweave the fragmented urban form that our streets and homes and public spaces have created. And we can do this in many ways by creating greenscapes in our spaces. Simply through soil building, leaf litter, incorporating appropriate plants for habitat, allowing nesting sites through maintaining trees appropriately, and even incorporating water features. These are all components of greenscapes that bring urban habitat back into our cities and towns. Waste recycling, another one of the key environmental challenges that confronts our urban towns and cities, is how can we actually use our greenscapes, the garden elements of our living areas, to be part of the current carbon and nutrient cycle. Okay? The whole idea of closing the loop rather than piping in, piping out with water is something that we're all beginning to address and understanding. The same applies for the nutrient cycle. To create sustainable urban environments, we have to be part of a closed nutrient and carbon loop. And it's the green component of our landscapes that actually facilitates that process. And by applying a range of technologies in composting and vermiculture and fermenting, of which there are incredible technological advances in recent years, we can use our green areas to actually be part of that cycling process in the footprint of where we live. We can also use our green spaces to grow food and address what is pending to be a global food security issue in decades to come. And in doing so, also reducing the transport energy cost with an ever-increasing area of food production away from where it's actually consumed. And we can do this in many ways: vegetables, herbs, fruit trees and vines, but also incorporating innovative small livestock, maybe not within our city centres, but certainly our rural urban fringes and in certain production nodes around our urban spaces, poultry and aquaculture. And how do we tie these production systems in with our greenscapes as well, both for maintenance as well as their food sources? And whilst doing this, we need to be mindful of a sustainable, sensible, realistic water budget. How do we achieve these goals while still being mindful of our water use? And of course, this comes down to sensible plant selection, appropriate soil conditioning, creation of microclimates, critical in our urban environments, which can become wind tunnels and heat sinks and be quite unpleasant places for plants to grow. But adopting new advances in irrigation efficiency, stormwater harvesting, and of course, wastewater reuse. And the notion of sustainable urban landscapes is more than just physical and environmental sustainability. It's about understanding the health and well-being of the people that make up communities and make up our towns and cities. And we know, and this knowledge is being supported by an ever-growing amount of research, about the benefits of gardening in terms of exercise, reduction in stress and anxiety, and even notions of reduction in crime rates, because people feel better about their communities and better about their urban spaces. And I think in a response to this, the nursery and garden industry are identifying new avenues to get out into the community to help promote the benefits, the wonders and the joys of gardening and creating greenscapes. And this is being done through schools and identifying the importance for young people to have a connection to food, for their physical and neurological development by developing fine motor skills, and also the development of teamwork and social skills. Another area that's really on the move is community gardens. And it's another area for the nursery and garden industry to really tap into. As urban areas are becoming denser and people don't have the luxury and access to as much garden space as they once did. Community gardens are providing a wonderful opportunity for people to get together, not only to address their own local food security issues, but also an opportunity to work with others and engage in a growing environmental awareness. And of course, a community as a whole strengthens through that increased connection and interaction. So what are some of the key challenges that confronts the notion of incorporating and growing urban greenscapes in our cities and towns? Water shortages, except for Queensland at the moment, obviously. But certainly water shortages is a major one, and an uncertain climatic future. Booms and busts. Increased urban density. And an emergence of an indoor techno-culture where some people struggle to know which end of the plant to stick into the ground. But we have many innovative solutions and new ideas coming to the fore, particularly emerging water technologies with wastewater, irrigation management, as well as a broadening understanding of how we can design our streetscapes and our urban environments with a respectful water-sensitive urban design and actually integrating stormwater management in with green spaces. There's also the growth and development of holistic systems-based planning for economics, which is really beginning to put, or at least identifying, the true value of landscapes, green space, as well as the range of environmental functions that they can play. And we'll hear more about this morning. So in conclusion, just to bring to the front of our minds the kinds of things we need to be thinking about today and really firming up the discussion, is that there are a number of key and important benefits that arise from incorporating green life into our urban landscapes. An increase in urban biodiversity, reduction of the urban heat island effect or urban cooling, improvements in the thermal performance interface with the built form, stormwater retention, delay of peak flows, and stormwater treatment, an area that needs a lot more work, particularly with our urban design and urban planning. Local food production, and finally, community development and social well-being. So to kick off, I'd like to put these ideas on the table, and I open the podium to my colleagues this morning who are going to explore these ideas with fervour. Thank you very much.
Now the first speaker for the day. Josh Byrne is an environmental scientist who's probably best known for his work with the ABC's Gardening Australia. Josh runs a Perth-based consultancy specialising in sustainable landscape design and environmental communication. He's currently finishing a PhD at Murdoch University, which looks at new concepts in water conservation for urban landscapes. To set the scene this morning, please welcome Josh Byrne.